That specific name? Says the tutorial tester. He's surprised while a boy approaches. He was about to say something about the test, but the second the goblins spawned, a figure passed and beheaded both creatures in a single strike. Hyuga was confused. Who's that guy? See, today is the player qualification tutorial day, and until now he's unimpressed with every single attendance. They all suffer too much to kill some mere goblins and can't barely hold on. A 2 versus 1. This guy is even scared of going to the next stage and decides to quit. The best until now reached the round 20, which is okay. So what the hell is this? Why, in a minute he's seeing a sea of dead monsters. The boy keeps advancing rounds faster than even he could follow. His cuts are too sharp and his movements too skilled, something beyond a master swordsman. Test 49 came and the ground shook, the floor began to crack. But before we have to understand who is this boy. He used to run the strongest team and being the rank 1 guildmaster. So why is everyone dead on ground while he's barely being able to hold on and it's about to die? He's been friend with this blonde guy called Kyojo for the past 10 years and even gave him a rare legendary item to protect him on this dangerous raid. All so they could succeed in the floor 8. But when the boss appeared and Narukami and his teammates went to fight it, Kyojo and his goons smiled. The perfect chance to get rid of the top guild had arrived. While they were distracted fighting and this cute healer was giving her best, the fake friend suddenly appeared from behind and stabbed her. But why this guy is betraying Narukami if they are all trying to save the world? 10 minutes fast forward and Kyoji shouts that he hated how much they've helped him. He hated being in the shadow of Narukami and his top 1 Blue Eyes guild. But today, that changes. That's what Blonde thinks, but he's not ready for what's to come. A lid hits the floor and a boy pops out of a trash bin, asking himself if this is Earth. He's now Hosoi Subaru at level 1, who has memories of people saying that he's a loser that don't come closer to the real Subaru that died 20 years ago. He then sees online info about the Blue Eyes guild, and strangely still exists, and people are saying to carry his past will, then one saying to carry it is none other than Kyojo himself. The revenge target is obvious, but he's just a level 1, while this guy has all his past power plus 20 extra years of leveling and farming. He promises that he will make this bastard remember who's the real top 1. But how is he going to fight the guy that now owns the Hunter world? The envy of Blonde has its roots. In the final battle, when the boss used its first roar strike, Narukami was able to stop it with a single strike. While his companions drowned him in praises, Kyojo envy at the side only grew stronger. That day and moment he stabbed the healer and smiled on her death, Subaru was being attacked by the boss. It felt as if Kyojo was attacking out of anger, but if we roll back, we discover that that same guy used B in Narukami's team. But he left it saying that he had a new plan to become stronger. The plan was killing him. So now we're back and the question is how a level 1 is going to kill the strongest guy on Earth. Plan A was to find some info on the old players of Blue Eyes. So he went to his own memorial while everyone prayed with their Subaru's mask on. He saw a glowing flower above the casket. He rushed, grabbed it, and recognized that this was one of his old teammates' skill. In the day of the last battle, he used a cyclone skill to push the bodies of friends away. So maybe that had a chance to survive. But if they are alive after all this, are they still truly his allies? With no power, rushing things is the worst option. So before any contact, he need to get his strength back. Sword in hands, cause in 2 days the player qualification tutorial will begin. The good part of Kyojo being alive is that he can be killed, eventually. Now we're back at the test day. The moment he achieved the step 49, the place trembled, the floor crackled. Hyuga shouted for him to run. Was he thinking he was Narukami Subaru for some reason? The Goblin King spawned furious seeing the sea of green bodies. Baldi asked for him to forfeit, and the boss advanced. Hosoi dropped his sword, grabbed iron nails from a mace at the floor and hurled them directly at the boss' eyes. The creature staggered back, and the moment it struck down, Hosoi sidestepped. This precision came from training with this goth babe. If that was my trainer partner, I would also be that precise. One to the jugular and multiple to the body. The unbeatable king was already exhausted, and like nothing it fell face first to the ground. Hosoi casually grabbed his sword and finished him off. He was the first one to defeat the Goblin King and clear step 50. However, Subaru was very worried about having such a monster in the tutorial. Anyway, the boy began to level up like crazy and also gained access to the tutorial shop. He had 2,500 credit points, but it was his first time seeing the shop. He had several things he could buy with the current money, and some things were really good. For example, the nameless demon sword that cost 1,000 points. Subaru felt like buying it, but its special ability drained his life. Another sword was the sacred sword Miranda, which cost 1,400 points. Since this one relieved fatigue, it was a better choice than just focusing on destructive power. However, Subaru knew that neither choice would be good if he didn't think more. Anyway, he was surprised because he was deciding between two, but saw that there were more things. He could also buy the appearance bet, which cost 1,400, but removed the bad effects of items and abilities. Seeing this, he didn't think twice about buying it, and along with the bet, he bought the demon's sword, since he wouldn't lose life anymore. Subaru was quite satisfied with the choice he made. The bald man understood the logic of the purchase, but commented that he still didn't understand one thing. He asked why Subaru bought the bet, because it could be useless in the future. Then, Subaru questioned whether he really needed to share everything he thought, and, naturally, Hyuga felt a bit disrespected. In any case, the bald man accepted to let it go this time and acknowledged that he had nothing. In the end, Subaru only thought that he didn't expect the kid to become an instructor. A long time ago, Helger was a fan, and he went to ask for an autograph. Subaru bluntly said he didn't have time for that. Then, the boy begged, almost crying, and said his name was Holger. Apparently, time had not been kind to make him bald so early. Anyway, Subaru said he didn't want to answer anything and asked for the results to remain a secret. Without hearing anything, Holger said he would teach the boy to be a good citizen, and asked if Subaru would join the Knights Guild, but he replied no. Holger panicked and tried to say how lucky the boy was to have an instructor guiding him. However, the protagonist simply went upstairs, leaving the bald man alone and sad. Seconds later, on the second floor called the Starting City, it seemed like a fair was happening. Everyone was selling their goods, but Subaru was worried. He had gained an impossible chance, a second opportunity to change everything. Having lived this once, Subaru knew he had to do things better than before. This was for his comrades who must be waiting for him and to finish his revenge. In the Starting City, there was a private training room. There, it was possible to test skills or equipment, and it was free to visit at any time. The receptionist pointed to training room number 1, but the protagonist asked to go to the 5th. The old man tried not to let the novice waste money, but Subaru insisted. Thus, he shouted nervously that whatever happened was his responsibility and paid 50 credits. In this place, the higher the number, the greater the difficulty. So, it was natural to offer an easier place for beginners. However, the protagonist wasn't really a beginner. He was well prepared for the 5th floor. After entering, Subaru grabbed the new sword, and it recognized the boy as its owner. All stats were temporarily increased, and the problem of draining life and stamina appeared. However, the greed skill kicked in, temporarily restoring a portion. Apparently, its level 1 wasn't enough to nullify everything. Then, the nameless demon sword began to absorb more and give back other stats. And at one point, the protagonist reached his limit. Without thinking twice, he used 10,000 credits to level up the skill to level 2. Now that it was a rank E skill, it could better withstand the sword's downside, although it still consumed life force. Once again, the protagonist's stats increased. Then, he ran to do the first test, throwing himself into the traps of the room. After a few minutes, the receptionist was already asleep when Subaru passed by the front desk. Waking up suddenly, he wondered if he was dreaming, because it seemed like that young man from before had just passed right in front of him. The receptionist got up trying to remember who it was, since only 10 minutes had passed. To be sure, he went to room number 5 to knock on the door, and he entered when he heard nothing, then was more surprised than ever, because the room was so destroyed that it looked like there had been an earthquake. The next day, Subaru stretched and complained because he felt his body as hard as a rock. The good side was that it was a weak demon sword, because a normal one would have been even worse. The negative effects had already worn off, thanks to which Subaru managed to use a bit of the power. With his current status, he couldn't even hold a demon sword. The compatibility of the skill he bought with the sword was great, and Subaru was already thinking that the greed bet would help with electric skills too. The problem was how he would improve it, because after leveling up, he was already broke. Having money problems made Subaru lament how messed up he was. Anyway, a person on the street comments to his audience that he feels a lot of nostalgia being there. He is a streamer who, after just receiving 1,000 credits from a guy named Alexandre, pours coffee on his own head. Subaru immediately thinks that this guy is crazy, but he looks online and finds a news article stating that 1in3 players is a streamer. Currently, there is a system where you stream and earn points in real time. Suddenly, someone arrives talking about the boy being there too. He says it's funny to find Subaru there. The protagonist starts to feel his body strange, as if he didn't like the person. This guy asks if Subaru is just going to ignore him, and the hero realizes he is afraid of him. The protagonist explains, trembling, that he also managed to get here. Then the guy sits down saying he is screwed because a loser like him managed to pass the tutorial. He confessed that he was hoping Subaru would die to the goblins. Before waking up in the trash, the true owner of this body was being bullied. Isaac said he did this because he was trash. He said the boy's name annoyed him and that he couldn't even do what he asked. Subaru said the credits he earned weren't enough to do it. However, he got kicked in the stomach when he tried to talk. He also ripped open a food bag and told the boy to live there in the dump because if he left, he would learn a good lesson. These memories made the hero understand why he was inside a trash can. Anyway, Isaac starts bragging that he made it to level 20 and that he is Reinhardt's son. He also says he learned a rank B skill, which is the maximum you can get in the tutorial. So Subaru just compliments the boy and warns that he is leaving. But, in this case, the blonde asks the hero to take advantage of him, leaving to buy a coffee and some snacks for him. Since Subaru doesn't respond, he starts to get furious. He asks, almost exploding with rage, if the boy has gone crazy for not obeying right away. However, it wasn't like Subaru had any credits left. Anyway, Isaac tells him to sit down. But the hero really didn't want to waste time avenging the body's owner. He was going to leave without causing problems, but the blonde grabbed the protagonist by the arm. Isak angrily asks if Subaru wants to find out what he does when disrespected. But the protagonist responds in kind, telling him to let go if he wants to live. The blonde says, almost bursting with hatred, that Subaru can't be so full of himself. Subaru just thinks he can't create a scene in front of all these people. But suddenly, the blonde starts laughing uncontrollably. He asks if the protagonist is scared because he knows he is a weakling. He also says that he must have barely escaped dying in the tutorial. But even though he is feeling good, he warns that whenever he wants, he can make him disappear without anyone noticing. Then he leaves, telling his friend to take care, which irritates Subaru for still being called a friend by Isak. It is said that there are two ways for players to get stronger. The first is by completing challenges. Passing the tower challenges and receiving rewards while continuing to level up makes the player strong. He needs to pay credits, but at least he doesn't die, just loses money and progress. The second method is hunting monsters outside safe zones or clearing special dungeons. It's much faster than challenges, but it's also real, so if you die there, you die in real life. Now Subaru was in the Orc Dungeon, a pretty dangerous place for players, but he thought it was better to take risks than to advance slowly, because the dangerous also means it gives better rewards. In his player kit device, Subaru checks some news again. A certain Narugami Subaru had 80,000 people live to raid the 4th floor. From the comments, this was already the 8th time he was trying, but seeing someone with such a similar name and wearing his mask irritates Subaru. Out of nowhere, someone sends him 20,000 credits, so the boy thanks them. Apparently, it was possible to send missions to streamers too. 3 other viewers send more missions that are, for example, prove you can do it. Unlike the fraud, the protagonist starts trembling with envy, because, while he was there taking risks, the copy was making money easily. Subaru really gets irritated and continues watching the stream for a few seconds, but he quickly stands up to continue doing what he has to do. He pulls out the sword he carefully stored inside an orc and prepares himself as a whole gang of them starts to arrive. Among them was also the orc general, who was the strongest and the boss. Even without the poison spikes from last time, Subaru claims to have something better. The demon sword absorbs the protagonist's health and boosts his stats. Then he jumps over the smaller ones, saying he doesn't have time for them, and speeds like lightning towards the boss. In 1 second, the protagonist reaches his head, and in the next second, he cuts the monster very well. Thus, he completes the dungeon and, not being foolish, later grabs an ancient mask. Acting like the others would be a good way to make money. So he put on the mask, thinking he would just do what he already knew. After all, among all these streamers copying the hero, he was the real Subaru. At the entertainment company Souten, Narukami-ku starts a stream and a girl watches it. However, at one point she screams in anger and scares her colleague, making him jump out of his chair. She is outraged that 5 people couldn't clear a dungeon. The friend asks what's wrong because the first ones were supposed to earn 1,000 credits. Then he explains that some guy named Subikichi messed everything up and that he might be a fan of Subaru because, while the real one was missing, the others were using his name. For her, despite living off this, the streams were dead because everyone was imitating Subaru. She also thinks it's disrespectful for these incompetents to risk their lives without knowing the basics. The friend asks why the girl gave up on the tower to work there then. After thinking, she replied that it was boring. In fact, the friend also shouldn't be talking much because he also gave up. He knew she had started climbing to meet Narukami-ko, and then lost motivation. Anyway, the girl screams that an excellent kid has appeared. However, since he was also wearing the mask, both nearly fainted. The boy asks why his colleague was watching such a lousy stream from the 2nd floor. However, she admits that whenever she sees someone wearing that mask, she gets a little curious, and she also charges the guy 1,000 credits for losing a bet. At the entrance of the 2nd floor, the protagonist thinks the place is nothing special. However, knowing there was a viewer made him feel a bit pressured. The girl on the account Luv Money asked if it was his first attempt, so Subaru replied that it was. Luv Money said it would be better if he didn't stream and focused on the first time, but there was already a bat monster there. But even with it coming at him full force, Subaru grabbed its head and slammed it to the ground like a sack of flour. Then the protagonist asked if Love was still worried. The goal of the floor is to clear the dungeon and escape alive. Another person enters the stream, but the girl keeps insisting that the protagonist shouldn't be greedy. So he thanks her but warns that there won't be any problems, because he also prefers to get stronger without relying on others. Obviously, everyone thinks he's crazy, and at least his name helps attract an audience. In the first match, a land creature goes straight for the hero's leg. However, he draws his sword and defeats the monster, saying that for now, he will rush quite a bit. He defeats the mud merman and earns 2 achievement points. After that merman, several of those giant bats appear flying, but the protagonist cuts them all down with a few swings of his sword. None of the viewers managed to see what just happened. Defeating those bats also gave 2 points, and the merman 4 points. That's why the hero said that if you pay attention to the sound, You could notice how many were coming and from where they were coming. And as the viewers were very surprised, Subaru said he would talk more. It still wasn't enough. He wanted to earn as many achievement points as possible. People were debating whether he was right to be quiet or was about to take a big hit. This was the end of episode 1. Subscribe to not miss the next part.